In the times that we are in today, it is highly important that we understand our Creator. Understanding Him is essential for having a strong relationship with Him. One mistake many of us do is tie the way that we would handle things in the way we want to perceive things and tie them to how we believe He should handle things. We don't understand that, as Isaiah chapter 55 verse 8 says, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, nor are your ways my ways, says Yahweh." We try to hold our Creator, the Most High, up to our earthly standards. This is something we should not do. In our lives, we will be constantly tested. We will face trials, persecution, and challenges. Sometimes we may wonder why we must go through some of these things, and sometimes people are faced with such challenges that shake their faith in God and remove their trust and faith. The book of Job is a book in the scriptures that can help us with our trust and having the right mindset through trials and tribulation. At one time or another, almost everyone has felt like Job. While going through trials and times of suffering, we are often overwhelmed by self-pity. We want an explanation for why God allows trials to happen to us. We often let people in with their opinions that do not help us, and if we allow them, it can completely draw us away from our relationship with Yah. The book of Job can help us in a time when we are surrounded with troubles by giving us a glimpse of God's perspective on our suffering. Just like Job, we must learn to submit to the Almighty Elohim and accept by faith that He has a good plan for us. This book is a great teacher of this lesson, so let's dive right in. Let's begin. There was a man in the land of Uz whose name was Job, and that man was blameless and upright, and one who feared Elohim and shunned evil. And 7 sons and 3 daughters were born to him. Also, his possessions were 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen, 500 female donkeys, and a very large household, so that this man was the greatest of all the people of the East. And his sons would go and feast in their houses, each on his appointed day, and would send and invite their 3 sisters to eat and drink with them. So it was, when the days of feasting had run their course, that Job would send and sanctify them. And he would rise early in the morning and offer burnt offerings according to the number of them all. For Job said, "It may be that my sons have sinned and cursed Elohim in their hearts." Thus Job did regularly. Now there was a day when the sons of Elohim came to present themselves before Yahweh, and Satan also came among them. And Yahweh said to Satan, "From where do you come?" So Satan answered Yahweh and said, "From going to and fro on the earth and walking back and forth on it." Then Yahweh said to Satan, "Have you considered my servant Job, that there is none like him on the earth, a blameless and upright man, one who fears Elohim and shuns evil?" So Satan answered Yahweh and said, "Does Job fear Elohim for nothing? Have you not made a hedge around him, around his household, and around all that he has on every side? You have blessed the work of his hands, and his possessions have increased in the land. But now, stretch out your hand and touch all that he has, and he will surely curse you to your face." And Yahweh said to Satan, "Behold, all that he has is in your power. Only do not lay a hand on his person." So Satan went out from the presence of Yahweh. Now there was a day when his sons and daughters were eating and drinking wine in the oldest brother's house. And a messenger came to Job and said, "The oxen were plowing and the donkeys feeding beside them when the Sabaeans raided them and took them away. Indeed, they have killed the servants with the edge of the sword, and I alone have escaped to tell you." While he was still speaking, another also came and said, "The fire of Elohim fell from heaven and burned up the sheep and the servants and consumed them, and I alone have escaped to tell you." While he was still speaking, another also came and said, "The Chaldeans formed 3 bands, raided the camels, and took them away. Yes, and killed the servants with the edge of the sword, and I alone have escaped to tell you." While he was still speaking, another also came and said, "Your sons and daughters were eating and drinking wine in their oldest brother's house, And suddenly a great wind came from across the wilderness and struck the four corners of the house, and it fell on the young people, and they are dead, and I alone have escaped to tell you." Then Job arose, tore his robe, and shaved his head, and he fell to the ground and worshipped. And he said, "Naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked shall I return there. Yahweh gave, and Yahweh has taken away. Blessed be the name of Yahweh." In all this, Job did not sin nor charge Elohim with wrong. Again, there was a day when the sons of Elohim came to present themselves before Yahweh, and Satan came also among them to present himself before Yahweh. And Yahweh said to Satan, "From where do you come?" Satan answered Yahweh and said, "From going to and fro on the earth, and from walking back and forth on it." Then Yahweh said to Satan, "Have you considered my servant Job, that there is none like him on the earth? A blameless and upright man, one who fears Elohim and shuns evil? And still he holds fast to his integrity, although you incited me against him to destroy him without cause." So Satan answered Yahweh and said, "Skin for skin. Yes, all that a man has, he will give for his life. But stretch out your hand now, and touch his bone and his flesh, and he will surely curse you to your face." And Yahweh said to Satan, "Behold, he is in your hand, but spare his life." So Satan went out from the presence of Yahweh and struck Job with painful boils from the sole of his foot to the crown of his head. And he took for himself a potsherd with which to scrape himself while he sat in the midst of the ashes. Then his wife said to him, "Do you still hold fast to your integrity? Curse Elohim and die." But he said to her, "You speak as one of the foolish women speaks. Shall we indeed accept good from Elohim, and shall we not accept adversity?" In all this, Job did not sin with his lips. Now when Job's three friends heard of all this adversity that had come upon him, each one came from his own place: Eliphaz the Temanite, Bildad the Shuhite, and Zophar the Naamathite. For they had made an appointment together to come and mourn with him, and to comfort him. And when they raised their eyes from afar and did not recognize him, they lifted their voices and wept. And each one tore his robe and sprinkled dust on his head toward heaven. So they sat down with him on the ground 7 days and 7 nights, and no one spoke a word to him, for they saw that his grief was very great. So the first 2 chapters of this book set up the rest of the book. There's a lot that could be said, but much of it is pretty much self-explanatory. Job was abundantly blessed in life. And the accuser, Satan, who Revelation 12 tells us is the accuser of our brethren, who accused them before our Elohim day and night, he made an accusation that the only reason Job walked upright is because of the blessings he had. And if he didn't have those blessings, he would eventually turn away from Elohim. Now, what I want to say is to make sure that this cannot be said of you. Do not tie your relationship and love of the Most High only because of the certain blessings you have. Love him when you're up, and love him the same when you're down. But Job lost everything. Even when he lost his material possessions and his family, he handled it in a way that us, as believers, must do as well. In chapter 1, verse 21, he said, "Naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked shall I return there. Yahweh gave, and Yahweh has taken away. Blessed be the name of Yahweh." If you lost all that Job did, would you react this way? Let us all build ourselves to make the answer of that question a yes. Because in the times ahead, we face losing in the same proportion as Job did. And your mind needs to be right so that you don't curse God and remove yourself from him. As you can see, even when struck with the afflictions in health, he did not curse or turn away from him, proving Satan wrong. But after he lost everything, this is when his so-called friends came to counsel him. Learn from this dialogue. Just because people come to check on you and seem like they want to help doesn't actually mean that that is what they are doing. I mean, even his wife told him to curse Elohim and die. Horrible advice. Job's answer to her is something as believers we must condition ourselves with, as well as our spouses and children. Verse 10 of chapter 2, Job says, "But he said to her, You speak as one of the foolish women speaks. Shall we indeed accept good from Elohim, and shall we not accept adversity?" This must be a mindset of all believers. Chapters 3 through 38 is a dialogue between his friends. For time's sake, we obviously won't go over the complete chapters, but we will take excerpts and see how each friend was trying to explain the reason for Job's suffering, what their advice was to Job, and what Job responded with. After this, Job opened his mouth and cursed the day of his birth. And Job spoke and said, "May the day perish on which I was born, and the night in which it was said, a male child is conceived. May that day be darkness. May Elohim above not seek it, nor the light shine upon it. May darkness and the shadow of death claim it. May a cloud settle on it. May the blackness of the day terrify it. Why is light given to him who is in misery, and life to the bitter of soul, who long for death, but it does not come, and search for it more than hidden treasures, who rejoice exceedingly, and are glad when they can find the grave? Why is light given to a man whose way is hidden, and whom Elohim has hedged in?" Eliphaz. Then Eliphaz the Temanite answered and said, "Remember now, who ever perished being innocent? Or where were the upright ever cut off? Even as I have seen, those who plow iniquity and sow trouble reap the same. By the blast of Elohim they perish, and by the breath of his anger they are consumed. Behold, happy is the man whom Elohim corrects. Therefore, do not despise the chastening of the Almighty. So that my soul chooses strangling and death rather than my body? I loathe my life. I would not live forever. Let me alone, for my days are but a breath." So Eliphaz spoke first. He was a little more courteous to Job than you'll see the other two friends are, but his view was still wrong. He firmly believed that Elohim would never punish the righteous and would not preserve the sinner. In the end, you will see that he concluded that since Job was suffering, he must be a sinner. But we know this was not the reason for the trials that Job was going through. Eliphaz's dialogue was basically assuming that Job must have done something wrong. Basically, this man has been beaten down, doesn't understand why, and his friend says, "Well, you must have done something wrong because God doesn't act this way with the righteous." I mean, his advice was, don't despise the chastening of Yahweh. And maybe that would be easier for Job if he knew what he did wrong. Job basically got in his feelings and said he hates his life and to leave him alone. Bildad. Then Bildad the Shuhite answered and said, "How long will you speak these things, and the words of your mouth be like a strong wind? Does Elohim subvert judgment? Or does the Almighty pervert justice? If your sons have sinned against him, he has cast them away for their transgression. If you would earnestly seek Elohim and make your supplication to the Almighty, if you are pure and upright, surely now he would awake for you and prosper your rightful dwelling place. I am blameless, yet I do not know myself. I despise my life. It is all one thing. Therefore I say, he destroys the blameless and the wicked. If it is not he, who else could it be? My soul loathes my life. I will give free course to my complaint. I will speak in the bitterness of my soul. I will say to Elohim, do not condemn me. Show me why you contend with me." Now, Bildad comes in more harsher than Eliphaz. He basically argues that God could never pervert justice. The only possible conclusion was that Job and his children received what they deserved as sinners, even falsely accusing Job's children. He basically told him to seek God more purely. Ironically, the chapter started with Yah praising Job for this. But because of his situation, Bildad assumed there was a problem in his following God. Similar to Eliphaz, but like I said, a little harsher and more sarcastic with it. Job was getting more in his feelings because of his friends. In chapter 10, he tries to speak to Yah as an equal, demanding that God give him a fair trial. Take note of it, because he's getting close to the edge with this kind of talk. Don't ever talk to our Father in this way. Zophar. Then Zophar, the Naamathite, answered and said, "If he passes by, imprisons, and gathers to judgment, then who can hinder him? For he knows deceitful men. He sees wickedness also. Will he not then consider it? For an empty-headed man will be wise, when a wild donkey's colt is born a man. If you would prepare your heart and stretch out your hands towards him, If iniquity were in your hand and you put it far away, it would not let wickedness dwell in your tents. Behold, my eye has seen all this. My ear has heard and understood it. What you know, I also know. I am not inferior to you, but I would speak to the Almighty, and I desire to reason with Elohim. But you forgers of lies, you are all worthless physicians. Now Zophar was the rudest of the three. His arguments were based on a falsely applied understanding of Yah, combined with simplistic reasoning. You will find that Zophar's doctrine was correct, but he applied it wrong. Like, he spoke about the impossibility of comprehending the deep things of Elohim. He pretty much called Job dumb, making a proverb-like statement about an empty-headed man will be wise. His advice to Job was to prepare his heart and pray, assuming that Job is suffering because of his iniquity. He was really talking down to him. Like, in verse 14, he was basically saying that Job needed to stop sinning and put all of it behind him and stop letting sin run loose in his home, implying that maybe Job had acquired his wealth by wrong means or had tolerated evil in his household. Job basically rejects this incompetent counsel, calling them worthless physicians who have made a wrong diagnosis concerning his disease and suffering. He obviously was correct. We can see that from these friends that instead of coming to help, they just assumed the worst of their friend and were speaking wrong about how our Father works. And this is very common in our lives. We can be going through some things, and the people that we confide in expect that what we are going through is because of lack of obedience and sin, when that is not always the case. Don't assume that everyone not reaping certain blessings is just because they are not obedient and following our Father. He works differently within all of us. Then Eliphaz, the Temanite, answered and said, should a wise man answer with empty knowledge and fill himself with the east wind? Should he reason with unprofitable talk, or by speeches with which he can do no good? The wicked man writhes with pain all his days, and the number of years is hidden from the oppressor. Your own mouth condemns you, and not I. Yes, your own lips testify against you. I have heard many such things. Miserable comforters are you all. Surely even now my witness is in heaven, and my evidence is on high. Eliphaz now tells Job that basically Job's arguments were destructive and without beneficial substance. Plus, he keeps calling him out with that empty knowledge talk. As he continues, he is subtly trying to prove that Job is a wicked man. Job belittles them as miserable comforters, saying rather than comforting him in his troubles as a good counselor, they have increased his trouble rather than the opposite. Then Bildad, the Shuhite, answered and said, you who tear yourself in anger, shall the earth be forsaken for you? Or shall the rock be removed from its place? The light of the wicked indeed goes out, and the flame of his fire does not shine. How long till you put an end to words? Gain understanding, and afterward we will speak. These 10 times you have reproached me. You are not ashamed that you have wronged me. Have pity on me. Have pity on me, O you my friends, for the hand of Elohim has struck me. Bildad didn't like all that feisty talk Job was giving out. In his eyes, Job was the one suffering. The nerve of him to be coming at them. He basically believed that by the way that Job was not receiving their sound advice, it was obvious that Job was the wicked one. He basically is saying that when are you going to stop all this crazy talk and start listening to us? Gain some real understanding. Job is not trying to hear these guys. He is tired of hearing Bildad's rude questions and the tormenting words of all his friends. Then Zophar, the Naamathite, answered and said, that the triumphing of the wicked is short, and the joy of the hypocrite is but for a moment. Listen carefully to my speech, and let this be your consolation. Bear with me, that I may speak, and after I have spoken, keep mocking. As for me, is my complaint against man? And if it were, why should I not be impatient? Look at me and be astonished. Put your hand over your mouth. Even when I remember, I am terrified, and trembling takes hold of my flesh. Why do the wicked live and become old? Yes, become mighty in power. In chapter 20, Zophar continues with the sarcasm and is not even offering advice, just sarcastic rebuke. From this point, Job tries to school them, telling them If they listen carefully, they can finally be of some comfort to him. With his rhetorical question in chapter 21, he begins poking holes in that retribution doctrine. It's the doctrine that they're giving that says that suffering always indicates God's punishment of a person. Our Father, the Most High, is controlling everything to accomplish His good purpose. And we know that all things work together for good to those who love Elohim, to those who are called according to His purpose. That's Romans chapter 8, verse 28. Is not your wickedness great, and your iniquity without end? Now acquaint yourself with Him, and be at peace. Thereby good will come to you. Receive, please, instruction from His mouth, and lay up His words in your heart. If you return to the Almighty, you will be built up. You will remove iniquity far from your tents. Oh, that I knew where I might find Him, that I might come to His seat. I would present my case before Him and fill my mouth with arguments. How then can man be righteous before Elohim? Or how can he be pure who is born of a woman? Far be it from me that I should say you are right. Till I die, I will not put away my integrity from me. My righteousness I hold fast, and will not let it go. My heart shall not reproach me as long as I live. Obviously, Eliphaz and Bildad were not hearing him, and continued on with their insisting that Job repent. And Bildad kept getting worse with his unneeded sarcasm and his degrading comments. But there was a younger fourth friend that was there that was silent during all of this. So these three men ceased answering Job, because he was righteous in his own eyes. Then the wrath of Elihu, the son of Barachel, the Buzite, of the family of Ram, was aroused against Job. His wrath was aroused because he justified himself rather than Elohim. Also, against his three friends, his wrath was aroused, because they had found no answer, yet had condemned Job. Now, because they were years older than he, Elihu had waited to speak to Job. When Elihu saw that there was no answer in the mouth of these three men, his wrath was aroused. So Elihu, the son of Barachel, the Buzite, answered and said, I am young in years, and you are very old. Therefore I was afraid, and dared not declare my opinion to you. I said, age should speak, and multitude of years should teach wisdom. But there is a spirit in man, and the breath of the Almighty gives him understanding. Great men are not always wise, nor do the aged always understand justice. Therefore I say, listen to me. I also will declare my opinion. Indeed, I waited for your words. I listened to your reasonings. While you searched out what to say, I paid close attention to you. And surely not one of you convinced Job, or answered his words. Lest you say, we have found wisdom. Elohim will vanquish him, not man. Okay, Elihu was angry about what both Job and his friends had been saying. Because he was younger, he didn't speak at first. But after hearing all that dialogue, he felt compelled to speak out. But please, Job, hear my speech and listen to all my words. Now I open my mouth. My tongue speaks in my mouth. My words come from my upright heart. My lips utter pure knowledge. The spirit of Elohim has made me, and the breath of the Almighty gives me life. If you can answer me, set your words in order before me. Take your stand. Truly I am as your spokesman before Elohim. I also have been formed out of clay. Surely no fear of me will terrify you, nor will my hand be heavy on you. Surely you have spoken in my hearing, and I have heard the sound of your words saying, I am pure without transgression. I am innocent, and there is no iniquity in me. Yet he finds occasions against me. He counts me as his enemy. He puts my feet in the stocks. He watches all my paths. Look, in this you are not righteous. I will answer you. For Elohim is greater than man. Why do you contend with him? For he does not give an accounting of any of his words. For Elohim may speak in one way or in another, yet man does not perceive it. Moreover, Elihu answered and said, do you think this is right? Do you say, my righteousness is more than Elohim's? For you say, what advantage will it be to you? What profit shall I have more than if I had sinned? I will answer you, and your companions with you. Look to the heavens and see, and behold the clouds. They are higher than you. If you sin, what do you accomplish against him? Or if your transgressions are multiplied, what do you do to him? If you are righteous, what do you give him? Or what does he receive from your hand? Your wickedness affects a man such as you, and your righteousness a son of man. Elihu tells Job how he sees it. He confronts Job in telling him that he is not righteous by attacking Elohim. He cuts straight to the heart of the problem. Job had been treating God as though he was an equal. He says, since Elohim is greater than man, why do you contend with him? Job had been treating the Most High like he was merely a human who could be held accountable in court. Imagine him talking like, this is not fair what's happening to me. You're just not right, God. I've heard that from many people before. Elihu continued on with implying that Job became proud. When Elihu exaggerates Job's position on the matter, saying, what profit shall I have more than if I had sinned? Basically, he's saying, what benefit do I receive for being good? Though Job never made a bargain to serve God for mutual benefit, like the pagan religions of his time did, Job's actions and words may have seemed to reflect that pagan attitude. Yah was not under any obligation to Job for any of his works or deeds. The way Job was petitioning the Most High to appear to court was highly wrong. Bear with me a little, and I will show you that there are yet words to speak on Elohim's behalf. Behold, Elohim is mighty, but despises no one. He is mighty in strength of understanding. He does not preserve the life of the wicked, but gives justice to the oppressed. He does not withdraw his eyes from the righteous, but they are on the throne with kings. For he has seated them forever, and they are exalted. Briefly stated, Elihu's belief was this: Yahweh is both mighty and just in his dealings with humankind. I agree. Setting the record straight, after this, Yahweh comes in chapters 38 to 41, he asks Job more than 70 questions that reveal his power and sovereignty. Then Yahweh answered Job out of the whirlwind and said, who is this who darkens counsel by words without knowledge? Now prepare yourself like a man. I will question you, and you shall answer me. Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Tell me, if you have understanding. Who determined its measurements? Surely you know. Or who stretched the line upon it? Have you commanded the morning since your days began, and caused the dawn to know its place, that it might take hold of the ends of the earth, and the wicked be shaken out of it? Have the gates of death been revealed to you? Or have you seen the doors of the shadow of death? Have you comprehended the breadth of the earth? Tell me, if you know all this. Who has put wisdom in the mind? Or who has given understanding to the heart? Who can number the clouds by wisdom? Or who can pour out the bottles of heaven? Then Job answered Yahweh and said, behold, I am vile. What shall I answer you? I lay my hand over my mouth. Once I have spoken, but I will not answer. Yes, twice, but I will proceed no further. Then Yahweh answered Job out of the whirlwind and said, now prepare yourself like a man. I will question you, and you shall answer me. Would you indeed annul my judgment? Would you condemn me that you may be justified? Have you an arm like Elohim? Or can you thunder with a voice like this? Then adorn yourself with majesty and splendor, and array yourself with glory and beauty. Disperse the rage of your wrath. Look on everyone who is proud and humble him. Look on everyone who is proud and bring him low. Tread down the wicked in their place. These chapters really speak of the power of our Creator, if you ponder and think on all of his ways. He reversed Job's accusation that he brought a lawsuit against him. He showed that it really had been Job that was accusing him, not the other way around. Yah reprimands Job. Who is Job to judge the Most High? He confronts Job with critical errors in his speeches. Understand our Father. He does not play games. Chapter 42 concludes the whole situation. Then Job answered Yahweh and said, I know that you can do everything, and that no purpose of yours can be withheld from you. You asked, who is this who hides counsel without knowledge? Therefore, I have uttered what I did not understand, things too wonderful for me, which I did not know. Listen, please, and let me speak. You said, I will question you, and you shall answer me. I have heard of you by the hearing of the ear, but now my eyes see you. Therefore I abhor myself, and repent in dust and ashes. And so it was, after Yahweh had spoken these words to Job, that Yahweh said to Eliphaz the Temanite, "My wrath is aroused against you and your 2 friends, for you have not spoken to me what is right, as my servant Job has. Now therefore, take for yourselves 7 bulls and 7 rams. Go to my servant Job, and offer up for yourselves a burnt offering. And my servant Job shall pray for you. For I will accept him, lest I deal with you according to your folly, because you have not spoken to me what is right, as my servant Job has." So Eliphaz the Temanite, and Bildad the Shuhite, and Zophar the Naamite went and did as Yahweh commanded them, for Yahweh had accepted Job. And Yahweh restored Job's losses when he prayed for his friends. Indeed, Yahweh gave Job twice as much as he had before. Then all his brothers, all his sisters, and all those who had been his acquaintances before came to him and ate food with him in his house. And they consoled him and comforted him for all the adversity that Yahweh had brought upon him. Each one gave him a piece of silver and each a ring of gold. Now Yahweh blessed the latter days of Job more than his beginning, for he had 14,000 sheep, 6,000 camels, 1,000 yoke of oxen, and 1,000 female donkeys. He also had 7 sons and 3 daughters. And he called the name of the first Jemimah, the name of the second Keziah, and the name of the third Karen Hapuk. In all the land were found no woman so beautiful as the daughters of Job, and their father gave them an inheritance among their brothers. After this, Job lived 140 years, and saw his children and grandchildren for 4 generations. So Job died old and full of days. A beautiful ending to this story. Job repented of his words and accusations that were based on a false belief that God always rewards the righteous in this life. Instead of accusing Elohim of injustice, Job submits to the will of the Most High, El Shaddai. Yah was angry with his 3 friends. Job had been right in maintaining his innocence in the face of his friends' false accusations. These men did not know the Most High and were teaching of his ways falsely, and Yah's wrath was against them. They had to come to the same man that they were earlier telling was wicked and knew nothing, the one they kept telling that he needed to listen to them to be more in God's favor. They had to offer up burnt offering so that Job, the one they were criticizing, could pray for them. Then Yah restored prosperity to Job and gave him back twice the livestock he had before, and gave him more children and long life, able to see 4 generations. Clearly, Yah was not admitting he owed Job anything, but he was expressing his wonderful good mercy. After Job had given up his demand for his former prosperity, Yah could give it to him as a free gift. The book of Job does not totally reject the principle of divine retribution that says that suffering always indicates God's punishment of a person. It only rejects its false application. It goes along with the book of Proverbs that the fear of Yahweh normally leads to an abundant and long life. But we cannot presume that Yah will always operate in this manner, like Job's friends tried to assume. In these times coming, many of us will be like Job in regards to our life circumstances. This is not a punishment. You were not born during this time because he has something against you. You must use this book as a lesson that no matter what, you must submit to his will, whether good or bad. He didn't have to, but he left us his word for assurance in him. He even showed John the vision of what happens to all that persevered in the time of great persecution. He sent us his Son, who died for our sins, who left so we could be indwelled with his Holy Spirit, so that we are able to have a personal relationship with him. He is continuously working on our behalf for our benefit, and he does not promise that it will always be sunny skies ahead, but he promises that if we keep our eye on his Son, that he will give us the peace to get through it, and our reward will be great. Be blessed and be redeemed. Don't hold our Father to your earthly terms. Do not listen to friends and family who want to present you to false attributes of our loving God. Continue to rest and trust in him. Surrender to his will and commit your life to what he has in store for you. Always pressing forward, always trusting him, and never taking your eyes off him and his everlasting love and care for us.